Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Sarah if you're new here. I am married to Solo, who's from Kenya, and we have been married for a long time and we have 11 children. And I am loving learning so many new things in my kitchen to preserve food and to just make my budget stretch longer and to have a nice supply. And today I really want to share with you one of my very favorite tips. I'm going to show you how to can up some meat. You can do this with beef, chicken, or ham. And today I'm doing it with ham, but the huge benefit of it to me is that you have shelf-stable food that is not in your freezer for when things go wrong. Like I mentioned, we have 11 kids and we've had a number of freezer accidents, and most of them are because a child has put something away in the freezer and didn't close it all the way, or has gotten popsicles out and didn't close it all the way. And it is horrible when you lose a lot of meat, or you have to figure out how to cook up and refreeze a lot of meat all in one day. I love having some meat that is shelf stable, that can last a year or more on your shelf, and is just also very convenient because it's ready to go at the drop of a hat. When you forget to thaw meat for dinner, you can just pull out a jar of meat and it works really well. Now, I've tried to can a bunch of meat. I've done chicken and beef a lot. I did some ground beef that we actually didn't like the texture of at all, but the chicken and the beef and the ham, when it comes in like roast form for the beef or the ham, is so good because the canning process actually tenderizes it. I own two traditional pressure canners that sit on my stovetop, but I have only had electric glass top stovetops. We are in the process of building a home on a large acreage that we bought, and we're living in a small house on that acreage now. And in our new home, we will have a gas range. I cannot wait. It will be a lot easier to do the canning, but I found it is possible to do it in the pressure canners, the traditional ones on the stovetop. It's okay, but it has to be babysat a lot. So my very, very favorite hack is what I'm gonna show you today. I got an electric pressure canner a year and a half ago, I think, and it has been so life-changing for me. I use it much, much more than I do just the traditional stovetop canners because I can get it started and I can walk away. And so the ability to just walk out of the kitchen and not have to watch a gauge on the stove is everything to me. It was actually a pretty big investment, I thought, when I looked at the price of the pressure canner, but how much it's paid me back in being able to can a lot of things on just pretty much any single day because I can walk away. I don't have to babysit it. It's been so worth it. So I'm gonna show you that process today using the electric pressure canner. I'm pretty sure you're gonna be convinced to put this thing on your wish list, but if you just have a traditional pressure canner, if you wanna pick one of those up, they're much cheaper too, and you can do the same thing on your stovetop. Before I show you that process, I wanna quickly take you out to my garage freezer because we just bought a whole hog, and I wanna show you how much meat it is and tell you the price breakdown for it. So this freezer was completely empty when we filled it with the hog, and this hog cost us about $200 for the actual meat and the hang weight. I actually don't know the weight. Solo, my husband, texted the farmer this morning and she was on the road, so she didn't know either to tell us, but this is all of the meat that we got out of it. It cost $200 plus the processing fee was $375, so altogether it was $575. It's definitely gone up in price. Those are a bunch of ham roasts, 5 large ones that I'm going to can today. And then these are roast ham hocks, pork chops, lard, ground sausage, pork shoulder steaks is that whole, there's a couple layers there. There's some ribs, a couple packages of those, and then we have a little more sausage and a lot of this very, very thick bacon. You cannot get anything like this in the stores that I've seen. It's incredible, and some of it is with maple, I think. Maybe not. All the ones I'm seeing are without. I don't know if I mentioned this is all lard that I will turn into lard. I'll render it down, and that will also be in a jar on my shelf, but I'm going to be canning up all the ham roasts for sure. maybe some of the ham steaks, but we'll put those on a slow cooker to cook. The ham hocks will go on a slow cooker. There's just 2, I think. And then we'll use the sausage and bacon for a lot of breakfast meals for dinner, or breakfast meals for breakfast. Because I don't know the weight of that stuff, I'm just having to guess that it's probably a lot cheaper to buy that whole hog at once still than to fill a freezer that size with all of that pork from the grocery store. But however, what I do know is that it has always been far superior in taste to anything we've gotten around here in a grocery store. Just every single time we've gotten a whole animal or half animal from a local farmer, it's been not even comparable. While the kids ate breakfast around me, I've been cutting up these 5 roasts to can. This is definitely the hardest, most tedious part. I like to cut off the fat. And then this is, 2 of them have had bones. One was real small. And this one that I'm working on now has some bones. And this is an 8-quart bowl that is almost full. I have some lard sitting out here, so I will definitely throw this fat in with that lard to render down later. And I will throw those in a pot today to make some soup or broth out of the ham bones. It makes me very happy to find ways to use all these parts without wasting anything. The frugal side of me loves that I'm not wasting things that I already have, and I'm making use of them. So the lard is great for cooking, and obviously we'll have some soup for lunch today. I finished cutting up all that ham. It's important to get most of the fat off if you can. It doesn't have to be completely off. As you can see, there's a little bit in there, but I did cut most of it off because it just helps with sealing the jars. If there's too much fat, it can make it difficult to seal around the top, and the seal is very important. So here's my fat pile I'm left with, and here's my bone pile. This is my Presto electric pressure canner. I've got out 4 jars. Actually, I actually got out 5 jars, but this one is chipped a little. So it's really important to get clean jars. You no longer need to sterilize them, but they need to be clean. And it's important that none of them are chipped like this around the top, because it will affect the seal of the lid on them. So I'm gonna put this one back. We probably should throw that one out. And we are just gonna use these 4 that are clean and ready to go. The Presto electric pressure canner comes with this cheat sheet, which I really love. It includes a water bath canning side and a pressure canning side. I refer to it all the time, even though I've done it many times. But if it's been like a month or 2 since I've canned something, it's so great to have this cheat sheet to just look through and see what the next steps are. I have this that I will link. I'll link the Presto and this on Amazon. It's just helpful, but not probably extremely necessary. But these extra little supplies do help. Especially this one I use a lot, and this one to lift the jars I do use a lot. And then my other favorite resource is this book. A viewer sent me this a couple years ago, and I really love it. I probably could get more updated printing of it, but once you actually know how to can, this book is a great resource, because I can just go to exactly what I'm canning and see what size jar I'm going to use and how much time it takes, the processing time. So I can see when I'm doing strips, cubes, and chunks of meat, I'm going to do quart jars, and it will be 90 minutes. It's so simple for me as a reference to just look up what I'm doing quick, and it also has a little description. If you already know how to can, it's just enough of what you need to remind you for that item. I can beef broth all the time, and so I'm always referring to this page for the broth. Pressure canning is probably the thing I'm asked about by my real life friends the most of all the skills I have learned and been teaching. So I'm gonna fill up this pot. As you can see, I have this piece in there, which is nice and stained, but it goes down, so it's lifted off a little bit of the pot. There's a simple fill line here, and I'll just fill it with water to that line. I would say the only downside to this pressure canner, the electric one, compared to the stovetop ones, is that it fits a little less jars than the stovetop canners. I have very large stovetop canners, so maybe that's why. The other downside would be the price, but I really do believe that it saves me money in the long run by getting things out of my freezer, which when we have a freezer accident, it saves me money, but it also just saves electricity because I'm storing less in the freezers, and I need less freezers. If I was storing everything in the freezers, I would need another freezer. So it does save me money that way. So I think that money thing kind of works out. In fact, I have a couple friends that are YouTubers that have 2 of these electric pressure canners, and I can totally understand why, if I had the space to store or even the counter space to run them, I probably would have 2 as well. Okay, so after I put in the water and put the pot back in, I'm going to hit this button for pressure can, and I'm going to turn it to 90 minutes because that's what we will do for raw packed meat in quart jars. Now it says insert jars. So when it says insert jars, I'll just take the jars and I just put it down in the water to fill it up a little. And just because I don't want them floating around in that water as empty jars. That just kind of helps them sit here. It's going to warm up in this. It actually fits 5 jars, so that's good. On second look, when you're using the wide mouth jars, which I really do like to use for meat, just because of the ease of dumping it back out later or digging it out, it does say to use 4. So if you're using the regular mouth jars, you can use 5. But they don't want it too close in there, so I'm just gonna go with 4 because I think I got 2 batches anyway, which will work out perfect. One other thing to note is if you have enough food for 3 cans, but your canner holds 4, what I do is I like to just can one jar of water. Then I have some shelf-stable, like good sterilized water on the shelf, sealed, that also lasts for quite a while. So I just like to throw in that just so I'm not wasting the space in there. Now I'm going to replace the lid and hit the button again, and it says warm. So this is the part, if you're doing anything else, you would prepare your food. However, my food's already prepped because I find that the chopping of meat and taking off the fat takes a long time, so I'd rather just do it before I get started. So this will take a few minutes. I'll come back and check when it's done, and it'll actually beep at me if I'm not looking at it. So it even says on my cheat sheet that it takes 20 minutes to warm it up. So if you know that your meal prep, your food prep part would only take 20 minutes, you hear the rooster out there? I live on a homestead. If you know it would only take 20 minutes, then you could just save that for this warming process, which will save even more time. While it's in that warming process, I do like to close this top, and I make sure this is left on vent, which is to one side or the other. All right, it just beeped and it says fill jars. It was not 20 minutes because I did not get all my dishes done. So I'm gonna pull my jars out, and I like to put a towel down, especially if you have stone countertops like my last house. These I do not, so probably wouldn't need it, but it's just to avoid putting really warm jars on very cold countertops. All right, so I like to pull these out. Usually I do it with 2 hands. Dump the water and stick them here. This canning set does have a green funnel. I'm just not sure where it is right now, so I'm using a different one, but the funnels do help. Even if you have something very easy to make it into the jar, it still helps to protect that rim from getting the juice of the meat or the fat on the rim. So I still will use a funnel in this case. And now I'm just gonna take my clean hands and fill this jar. I'm gonna pack it right in. I don't wanna pack it down very heavy. We're just gonna leave 1 inch headspace at the top. So 1 inch headspace, this tool is where that comes in handy. The bottom of it from the top little notch is 1 inch. So I just make sure they're all 1 inch. And it's just about right. It's a little different with meat than liquids, but yeah, they're all just right about there. At this point is when I just dump a little bit of vinegar into my water, just because that helps the jar stay cleaner. Then I have a paper towel here, and I'm gonna use this, and with my one-handed ability, I'm going to just wipe the rim of the jar to make sure, again, that there's no fat there. Any dirt or fat or anything like that could prevent the sealing of the jars. And that's our goal, is to get them sealed so they last a long time on our shelves. I've got some clean new lids here. Just gonna stick those on the top. Then I have these rims. Rims, is that what they're called? Not sure. Tightening it up with one hand. So it's tight, but not over tight. And then I'm going to stick them in because they're not hot. This raw meat was not hot. It's easy to pick them up. Sometimes I need that jar holder. For this step, depending on what I'm canning, I'm going to stick them in that warm water. I'm going to replace the lid. And then keep that over here on vent. Close that. And we'll hit the main button again. We just keep hitting the main button and it takes us through the steps. Next it says heat. So this process, there's one more step we have before we can just really walk away. I've got competition with a toddler over here. But this process will take a little time. I don't remember how much time, where it builds up the pressure and it will start steaming out of here, which is perfectly normal in this heat time. I'm gonna stick the rest of this meat in the fridge and I will do this process all over again in a few hours. I think I'm just about right for 2 batches, so I'll end up with 8 quarts of meat. By the way, this quart jar tends to be, from what I've noticed, about 2 pounds of meat, and the pint jars are 1 pound. So that's good to know based on what kind of denomination you want in your cans. Do you want 1 pound of meat or do you want 2 at a time? Obviously with our big family, we use 2 of these jars normally when we do a meal, or sometimes we can make one of them go farther. It would probably be beneficial for me to put some in these smaller jars because then we could have 3 pound meals, which is a great option. It's been 16 minutes and as you can see the timer is now going down from 10 and you can hear it venting here, which is exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's important to know that this is still on vent setting, which is to one side or the other, and up here is very hot, so don't touch it. All right, the time is done. It now says can. It says put regulator on and can. So this is the point where we're gonna move this. You could do it with a hot pad, but it's not even hot. You're gonna move it to the center. That also says can. And then you push that. That's it. Now it's going to do the 90 minutes. The pressure's built up, and then it will cool for a long time. So it'll be several hours before it's ready to come out. Many of my kids even know how to run this machine because I'll get all the food in, the cans in, and have to run out. I know it's loud. I'll have to run out of the house or go work in another area of the house. So they know when they hear the beep to turn it to can and push the center button. It's that simple. Pretty soon that piece will pop up and the venting will stop. Whoop, there it goes right there. So it's not that loud the whole time. It's just loud for about 10 minutes. I just wanted to give you guys a little update so you know how this machine works. It is on cool. It's been about 2 hours, so an hour and a half, 90 minutes is how long it took to process. Then it switches to cool, but we actually wait to open it. If I were to move this, a little steam would come out. We don't do that. We just wait to open it until that falls. So it might be an hour or 2 of cooling, and then we can open it up. So I never move this. It's not like a pressure cooker where you can move that over and just release the steam. No, you want it to definitely come down naturally on its own. Okay, it's a couple hours later. I've come back. It says done, and this has dropped. So that's what I was really waiting for. I'm gonna open that up. I can move that just to make sure there's no steam, but there's none because I waited till that thing dropped. This, however, is very, very hot, and this is when this tool comes in handy. Whoops, I'm gonna try to lift them straight out and set them once again on a towel because they're very hot. My next step is to just leave these for 24 hours. I will make sure that they have all sealed so that their lids are not able to pop, and I tend to hold them up by the lids after I take the rim off. Just kind of pull it up by the rim after 24 hours or even 12 hours and just make sure it doesn't come off at all. If it does, we'll use the meat right away. If it does not, then it is good to go. I have used it over a year later. The shelf-stable meat. This is my first time doing ham, so I am gonna open up one of these later and just try it, see what it's like. I'm sure it's gonna be excellent. I can tell 3 out of the 4 have already popped down. This one still yet will, but I have every confidence it will. So I do want to point out that I did not add any liquid to these jars. Just to remind you, the liquid is now up to here, up to the top of the meat. And sometimes it's a little lower, the liquid, than the meat. But regardless, the meat, when you can it, raw packed, it cooks and cans in its own juice. So you don't have to add any liquid. And in the end, you have plenty of liquid. I will start another batch even though it won't be done till really late, like the middle of the night. I'll just get it out in the morning. I don't know if that part's recommended for leaving it in there, but I've done it several times and never had a problem. It always just seals and pops right in the machine. Tomorrow morning I'll pull out 4 more cans and I'll have 8 jars, which would be 16 pounds of ham that is not stored in my freezer. So it's saving me money, it's saving me time in the end, because I'll use them for a quick meal. And it's really wonderful. One of my favorite investments I've ever put into my kitchen is this digital pressure canner. Let me know if you've tried it, if you've canned meat, or if you plan to in the future. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. There's a chicken on the deck. Somebody get the chicken off the deck.
That is not a problem we used to have.
No, it's not.